The New York Times had an op-ed written by two UCLA professors that talked about the importance of assimilation, and they talked about it in the context of the Boston bombing. Now, I should note and preface this by saying that they're not blaming the lack of assimilation as the cause of the bombing in Boston. However, they are saying that there should be more emphasis placed on assimilation because it helps immigrant children feel like they're part of the community and not feel like they're outsiders. So now, as you guys know, the 26-year-old bomber that was, killed had written on Facebook that he didn't understand Americans and he didn't have a single American friend. So they saw that as something that was very jarring, and they wrote about it.
I thought it was jarring too, and I actually think it's one of the reasons he did the bombings. There's a lot of people dissatisfied with the American government. They don't kill 8-year-old boys. Okay, and they don't blow the legs off of people. I think this guy did it because he's a loser and he couldn't get any friends, so he was angry at the world because the world rejected him, and so that's why part of why he did this.
Yes, so and that was Tamerlan, obviously, and Marcelo Suarez Orozco and Carola Suarez Orozco wrote this op-ed, and they also did a study on immigrant children between the ages of 9 and 14. Now, they surveyed 400 students in 20 different public schools over 5 years. Okay, so this was a pretty good study, and they wanted to see, what their feelings were as immigrant children in the United States. And they found that they do feel like outsiders. They do feel like they're not part of the community, and they almost feel like they're ousted in some way. Okay, so here are some of the results of the study that they did. Only 6% of the participants could name a teacher as someone they could go to with a problem. Just 3% could identify a teacher who was proud of them.
Okay, that's really disappointing. I'm surprised those numbers are that incredibly low. So look, I have strong opinions on this, but it really depends on your frame of reference. If it turns out your teachers were not people you could rely on, well, you might have a different frame than I did, because my teachers were great to me, honestly.
Right, but I feel like you were, aside from your name, because obviously you didn't change your name, but you were very much willing to accept American culture and to assimilate.
Which is what you should do.
Okay, so that is what I really want to focus on. I know I brought this up in the context of the bombing, but I want to have a broader discussion about assimilation, because I feel like among liberals there's this divide. There are the liberals that are very much, I wouldn't say against assimilation, but they hate the idea of emphasizing and encouraging assimilation, because they think that that means getting rid of your culture and your heritage.
Right.
But at the same time, you're kind of at a disadvantage if you don't assimilate.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. Now, normally I have the monopoly on the truth. Everybody knows that. But in this case, I'm going to make a rare exception and say that it is possible to have a different perspective on this. And it really depends on when you came over, how strongly you feel about your home culture, the experiences that you had. Were you befriended? Did you have good teachers? So they're absolutely right that different perspectives can lead to different results. My perspective is I'm an enormous fan of assimilation. And I just think that it's going to get you better results, and it's not in any way like selling out. I think that's just an incredibly dumb way of looking at it. Part of the reason I believe that is philosophically, I believe in the American idea, I believe in the American culture, and I think that the American culture, what it does is it borgs every other culture. So I'm happy to be Turkish. It'll take some of the good parts of what it, like shish kebab is Turkish. Boom, you have been assimilated. Resistance is futile. Okay, you're Armenian. They'll take the good parts of being Armenian, good parts of being Jewish, etc., and it creates this, what I think is a wonderful mixed up culture. Now, look, some people will look at that and go, Americans are jingoistic, and you're all, and yeah, of course it has downsides. We're not Fox News here. It's not, the world is not black and white. But to me, I like American culture. I love the sports, the food, everything here. And honestly, and this is where I'm the bad guy, the people who don't assimilate, they rub me the wrong way. And I'm being honest about it.
So you make a very interesting point there, because it was another thing that was addressed by these professors, okay? When asked what Americans thought about immigrants of their national origins, 65% of the students provided negative objectives. Most Americans think we are lazy, gangsters, drug addicts, that only came to take their jobs away, a 14-year-old boy in the Bay Area told us.
Now, look, that sucks, and I defend them against those characterizations and those stereotypes, and I hate the people who do that. At the same time, I get, again, from my perspective, growing up Turkish, there were the guys who would come from Turkey to here, and they'd be like, oh, Turkey's so much better, oh, screw America. All right, great. Here's your one-way ticket back. Have at it, horse. All right, go back and enjoy the baklava. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly experienced Armenians that had the same type of mentality. Oh, Armenia is so much better than America, and and of course they had family members here in the United States that went through a lot just to get them here. But
that's
also,
such a great point, and I think that part of that is that I feel like you should be grateful. There's great opportunity here. Now, look, there's in so many ways it got limited, and we fight back to try to broaden that opportunity here so that everybody can get that. But my dad went through a lot to get us here. My uncle went through a lot to get us here. And then you come here and you're a kid and, oh, you know the world. Oh, yeah, the other place is better. Oh. Yeah, then why are you here?
Yeah.
I'm not buying it.
So I do think that there is, importance to assimilate. I'm not as, my opinion on it isn't as strong as yours is. I think that it is important to maintain your culture and still enjoy your heritage and nationality. But of course, there are certain things that will put you at a disadvantage. So one thing that I remember Steve-O talking to me about is his name, right? So Steve isn't his name, right?
It's
Exactly. He changed his name to Assimilate. And he said that helped him in terms of job opportunities and things like that because, it sounds American.
Right.
And for some reason, Americans will immediately, not all of them, this is kind of a general statement, but you see an ethnic name and you're less likely to get hired at certain jobs. We've done study after study on that. You guys know
so
that.
You're putting it yourself at some percentage disadvantage. Now, nonetheless, I put myself at that disadvantage. And so just because you assimilate doesn't mean you sell out. I left my name as Cenk Uygur. It is impronounceable. And it starts with a C and it's pronounced Cenk. And the other name, Uygur or Uygur or Uygur, it's impossible, right? But I believe in being a Turkish American. I'm really proud of being a Turk. And I talk about it on the show all the time. I equate that with being strong, etc. And so you don't have to give up your identity. You don't have to give up your ethnicity. In order to assimilate to America, you could have both. And look, again, I don't want to be too judgmental because some people come later in life and it's harder for them to adjust and they get accepted less. And what are you going to do normally as a defense mechanism? Well, I didn't want you anyway.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I think that we should also represent the other side a little bit as well because, in some cases you come to the country as an immigrant, let's say you're older, let's say you're in your teens, and you enter the school system, like the public school system, where these cliques are already formed, right? So you come in and maybe you don't speak English perfectly, maybe you don't understand American culture perfectly, and people already have taken you out of their group. So there needs to be some sort of way to encourage kids to be more accepting.
See, that's a great point, Anna, because look, as much as I want people to assimilate, and sometimes I get annoyed if they don't, well, we should help them rather than fight them, right? If you do the stereotypes and you say, oh, well, I'm not going to hire an immigrant, or I think they're, all the things that the kid described there, well, then it's not surprising that they're not going to want to join you, right? Instead, if we had, and people don't remember this, right? Especially our generation. But what's really interesting about American history is there was a time when America was much more welcoming. Do you know that when my dad came to this country, within a couple of months, he was invited to the White House? Because they loved immigrants back then. They're like, oh, look at this Turkish engineer kid, came all the way from Turkey.
Yeah.
JFK would like to meet some immigrant kids. He goes to the White House. That's amazing. A random family that they were staying with, my dad and my mom, when they had just gotten married. They're like, you know what? We're going to vacation, or they knew through school or something, right? They were older. They said, we're going to vacation in Miami in our house. You guys want to join us? My parents had no money. I mean, this was manna from heaven. And they went down there and they had a great time in Miami because of the generosity of these great Americans, right? We had a time like that in America. We need to go back to a time like that in America so that someone like my dad, who was young at the time, thought, my God, I love America. Then he went back to Turkey to start his career and then came back here because he had such a positive image of America and instilled that in his kids. That's the America we want, so that people are ecstatic about assimilating to it. So both sides need to reach out and get to a better place.